The room fell strangely quiet the moment he said the words, and for a few seconds no one moved, no one spoke, and the crystal glasses on the long white tables seemed to freeze in the warm light of the chandeliers, because the man who had just spoken those calm, simple words was someone most people in that luxurious ballroom had never expected to see there. "She's with me," the single father said quietly, his voice steady and calm, and the billionaire's daughter standing beside the table slowly turned her head toward him, her fingers still holding a glass that suddenly felt heavier than before. A few guests whispered to each other, confused and curious, because the man standing in that elegant hall did not look like someone who belonged among wealthy investors, famous politicians, and powerful business leaders. His black shirt was simple, his jacket worn from years of work, and there was something in his posture that showed both strength and quiet exhaustion. His name was Daniel Carter, and for many people in that city he was simply a man who repaired broken things for a living. He fixed cars, doors, machines, anything people brought to his small workshop at the edge of town. He rarely spoke about his life, and he never asked for sympathy. But anyone who looked carefully could see that life had been hard on him for a long time. 5 years earlier Daniel had lost his wife during a sudden illness, and from that moment he had been raising his young daughter alone. He worked long hours every day, often sleeping only a few hours each night, trying to keep a small roof over their heads and food on the table. Most people in the city barely noticed him, except one man who had made Daniel's life quietly miserable for years. That man was Victor Halston, a powerful businessman who owned several companies and controlled many properties across the city. Victor had influence everywhere, in banks, in government offices, even in charity organizations. People respected him, feared him, and rarely questioned him. Years earlier Daniel had unknowingly crossed Victor's path when he refused to sign a dishonest repair contract that would have helped Victor hide financial fraud. Daniel had simply said no and walked away, but Victor never forgot the humiliation of being refused by a man he considered insignificant. From that day forward Victor quietly used his influence to make Daniel's life harder. Permits for Daniel's workshop were delayed, suppliers suddenly refused to sell him materials, and rumors appeared suggesting Daniel was unreliable. Daniel never fought back publicly. He simply worked harder, said little, and focused on raising his daughter. On the evening of the grand charity gala, Daniel had not planned to attend anything at all. In fact, earlier that day he had been repairing an old generator at the hotel hosting the event. He had arrived wearing his work clothes, expecting to finish the repair and leave before the guests arrived. But something unexpected happened while he was leaving the building. In the quiet hallway near the service entrance, Daniel saw a young woman sitting on the floor beside a wall, her elegant green dress wrinkled and her eyes full of silent frustration. At first he assumed she was simply tired or upset, but then he noticed something unusual. People walking past her were pretending not to see her. Some even whispered before quickly moving away. Daniel paused for a moment before asking softly, "Are you all right?" The woman looked up at him with surprise, as if she had not expected anyone to speak to her. Her name was Amelia Harrington, though Daniel did not know that yet. She was the only daughter of billionaire investor Robert Harrington, and the entire charity event that night was organized partly by her family foundation. Yet despite her wealth and status, she looked strangely alone in that moment. Amelia hesitated before answering, then she said quietly, "They asked me to stay out of the ballroom for a while." Daniel frowned slightly, confused. "Why?" Amelia gave a small, bitter smile. "Because my father's business partner believes I'm an embarrassment tonight." Daniel soon learned the truth. Victor Halston, the same man who had quietly sabotaged Daniel's life for years, was also one of Robert Harrington's most trusted partners. Earlier that evening Victor had publicly criticized Amelia for questioning one of his business deals. He had mocked her opinions in front of guests, calling her inexperienced and emotional. To avoid further embarrassment, some event organizers had suggested she step away until things calmed down. Amelia had left the ballroom quietly, but inside she felt humiliated and angry. Daniel listened without interrupting. He understood humiliation well. For years people had treated him as if his voice did not matter. He looked at Amelia for a moment and then said something simple. "You shouldn't be sitting here alone." Amelia sighed. "I suppose it's easier for them if I disappear for a while." Daniel shook his head slowly. Sometimes people with power hope others will disappear quietly, he said, but that doesn't mean they should. A few minutes later Daniel walked with Amelia back toward the ballroom entrance. When they stepped inside together, many guests turned their heads in surprise. Victor Halston stood near the center table speaking confidently with several influential guests. When he saw Amelia return, and especially when he saw the mechanic standing beside her, his expression changed immediately. Victor's voice carried across the room. "Miss Harrington," he said with a cold smile, "I thought you were resting somewhere more appropriate." Amelia froze slightly, but before she could answer Daniel calmly spoke the words that silenced the room. "She's with me." The sentence was simple, but something about Daniel's calm tone made people stop whispering. Victor laughed lightly, trying to turn the moment into a joke. "And who exactly are you?" Daniel answered quietly. "Someone who doesn't believe she deserves to be treated like she doesn't belong here." The tension in the room grew heavier. Victor stepped closer, his voice lower but sharper. "This is a private event, not a repair shop." Some guests laughed nervously. Daniel did not react. Amelia stood beside him, surprised by his quiet courage. For the first time that evening she felt something she had not felt in hours, a small spark of hope. Victor eventually waved a dismissive hand and returned to his guests, pretending the situation was beneath his attention. The music resumed and conversation slowly continued. Yet something had changed in the room. Over the next few weeks Amelia began asking more questions about Victor's business activities. Daniel returned to his simple life, expecting nothing to come from that brief moment. But Amelia had not forgotten his calm words. She quietly investigated financial records connected to Victor's companies. What she discovered shocked her. Several of Victor's projects were hiding illegal financial transfers and fraudulent contracts. One of those contracts involved the repair agreement Daniel had refused years earlier. Amelia gathered documents patiently, speaking carefully with lawyers and trusted advisors. Victor still believed himself untouchable. He continued appearing at public events with confidence, mocking critics and dismissing accusations. But patience has a strange power when combined with truth. Months later during another large corporate meeting, Amelia presented evidence of Victor Halston's fraudulent dealings to the board of investors. The room that once admired Victor now sat in stunned silence as documents and financial records appeared on the screen. Victor tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. Within weeks his companies were investigated, his reputation collapsed, and the same powerful people who once supported him quickly distanced themselves. Meanwhile Daniel knew nothing about these developments until one quiet afternoon when Amelia visited his small workshop. She stood at the doorway smiling gently while Daniel wiped grease from his hands. "You once said I didn't deserve to disappear quietly," she told him. Daniel shrugged slightly. "It seemed true." Amelia laughed softly. "It helped me remember who I was." She then explained everything that had happened since the gala night. Daniel listened silently, surprised but calm. Before leaving Amelia handed him a small envelope. Inside was a legal document approving funding for Daniel's workshop expansion through the Harrington Foundation, officially recognizing his business as a trusted service partner for several community programs. Daniel looked at the paper for a long moment. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Amelia answered with a warm smile. "Because the night everyone else looked away, you didn't." And in that simple moment, standing in a small workshop far from glittering ballrooms and powerful men, Daniel Carter finally felt something he had not felt in many years, the quiet, steady feeling that justice sometimes arrives slowly, but when it does, it remembers exactly who stood up when it mattered most.